In the name of the Holy and Blessed Trinity, revealed to us as the Creator, the Redeemer, and the Giver of life. Amen. Please be seated. If you've had an opportunity to read my pastoral letter this week, you'll know that I refer towards the end of it, in conjunction with the poem or in reference to the poem, a very vivid childhood memory of being with friends in their farmhouse and surreptitiously feeding the dogs under the table. The backstory to that story is these were great family friends and they lived on a dairy farm, and their farmhouse was, like many farmhouses, open to everyone who came, and quite literally very open. And it seemed at times that the farm animals were as much a part of the inside world of the house as the people inside the house were a part of the farm outside. This meal is memorable for many reasons, not least of which was the mother, the wife in the household, the woman, had made a wonderful meal of steak and kidney pie, huge numbers of steak and kidney pie. And it was, how do I put this tactfully, rustic. The kidneys were very rustic. Let's just say steak doesn't have tubes attached. We getting the picture? So the children sitting at the children's table were busy deconstructing, not that we knew that word then, we were busy deconstructing the pie and feeding the kidneys to the dogs under the table because, I'm not eating anything with tubes on it. It's a vivid memory, and I'll share another part of that memory a bit later, but we often have vivid memories or vivid stories associated with food. And I know I've shared a lot of them with you. When we look at the Gospels, so often the stories that are recorded for us, like the one today, involve food. So why is that? Well, firstly, I think it's because these experiences of eating together or sharing a meal or being fed or feeding are literally part of how we live. And often the experience that we share at table, or when we share a meal with someone or share food with someone, is an action of self-giving and hospitality and generosity and love. And the value is often, or what makes the memory, not so much the actual food, though sometimes it can be that. It's the experience. It's the experience around it. The food becomes that trigger point for us in our memory that reminds us of the greater experience. So in this story of the farmhouse, when I tell you about feeding the dogs under the table, what I'm also doing is remembering their vast kitchen dining area with its French doors open to the beautiful plateau, and how our friend was carving the roast and was about to place a piece of meat on my father's plate when one of the farm cats leapt from the cupboard and in one movement took the meat from the plate and out the other window. To which our host just replied, "You'll need another slice then." But the big thing I remember is how loved we were, how free we were in that place, the adventures we had on that farm, how safe we felt, and how that family introduced me, a city child, to the absolute joy and wonder to be found in the cycles of birth and life and death on the farm, of seeing newborn calves and marvelling at the way the mother tended for them. Things like that. They speak to a deeper experience. And all of this is a very long traipse down memory lane to enter into our gospel for today. Because it's important for us to remember that the stories, the parables, the things we hear in the gospels are first and foremost stories that were passed on. Long before they were written down, they were stories told about Jesus, one to another, just as we're doing today. And what occurs in this story of the woman seeking healing for her daughter is an occasion where that food motif is used to remind us, to remind Jesus of the generosity and the infinite abundance of God's love, God's mercy, God's joy in us all. The gospel writer goes to great lengths to tell us twice, or three times actually, that this woman is an outsider. Firstly, she's a woman approaching a man, breaking boundaries. Secondly, we're told she's a Gentile, so we know she's not of the faith. And thirdly, we're told she's Syro-Phoenician, so she's defined by her nationality, by her place of origin. Nameless, but an outsider, an outsider, an outsider. But yet she comes because love has brought her to the one who is incarnate love. And she claims a morsel, a crumb of that love, of that hope, of that joy, of that promise. And more than receiving a crumb, she receives, her daughter receives, both of them receive in abundance of the love and grace of God. As I reflected in my pastoral, do we ration our love? Do we ration hope? Do we ration joy? Do we say, well, you can't have too much of a good thing? Do we say, oh, if you have too much love or hope or joy or faith, you know, it's not like binging on the lollies after a children's party. It's not actually going to make us sick. Instead, it will fill us in ways we never knew were possible. Now that's all very well and good, it seems, when things are going hunky-dory, when things are going well, but what about when it hits the hard times? Where do we find the joy, the love, the hope in that? Well, we find it in the small things, the reminder that God is with us in the suffering, in the hard times. I wrote again in my pastoral, and I said to many of you last week, the dragonflies that are between the east end of the cathedral and where I live at the moment are magnificent. There are clouds of dragonflies. And I'll admit, I've parked my car and sat there just watching them, the sunlight glittering off their wings, their absolute delight in filling the sky with colour. A dragonfly is a reminder to us, a symbol of new life, of hope, of rebirth. Taking a few moments to be lost in the wonder and the beauty and the glory of God's creation, it's not going to make me sick. It's not going to fill me up. But it is going to fill me with something that will sustain me for the next stage of the journey when I get out of the car. So where will you find joy today? Where will you find love and hope? Where will be the small thing, the little thing? Perhaps it will be something as simple as someone sharing food with you, or a memory that comes back to fill a need at a time of great despair. For the God who sees beyond the outsider, the outsider, the outsider, sees and loves us and knows our every need before we name them. So come and be filled with the joy and the love of God. Amen.